Well, hello everyone, and welcome back for another episode of Faith and First Responders podcast. I'm Chaplain Dan Personer from the state of Illinois.
And I'm Chaplain Jared Blake from the great state of Maine. Let's dig right into it. We're going to, if you have your Bibles, we're going to be Psalms 31, beginning at verse 14. But I trusted in thee, O Lord. I said, Thou art my God. My times are in thy hand. Deliver me from the hand of mine enemies and from them that persecute me. Make thy face shine upon thy servant. Save me for thy mercy's sake.
Well, I really like that verse today, Jared.
Well, I think for the topic that we're going to talk about, it's very important to, I think, all of us that are here for this discussion, because you can take those three verses and simplify them, and maybe we'll do that here in a little bit. But Dan, why don't you introduce our special guest today?
Yeah, absolutely. And today we'd like to welcome Jeff Dill from the Firefighter Behavioral Health Alliance. Welcome, Jeff.
Daniel and Jared, thanks for having me on today. It's quite an honor.
Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for joining us. I
Yeah.
almost said this evening. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. Jared, I don't know where I am, to be honest with you.
Neither do I. A couple episodes ago, we did a episode on first responder suicide, and we mentioned the Firefighter Behavioral Health Alliance, and thought we would bring Jeff on here to kind of describe what is the Firefighter Behavioral Health Alliance.
Well, I appreciate it. I am a retired fire captain from the northwest suburbs of Chicago. Started as a volunteer, and then I went career in '95 and retired in 2015. Through that, I was a battalion chief for about 12 years, and while I was a BC, I went back, got my master's degree, and became a licensed counselor. And in 2009, I founded Counseling Services for Firefighters. I was training chaplains and counselors that, hey, if you want to work with us, you need to understand who we are. We're a little bit different, our beliefs, the way that we were raised in the fire service. And then while I was teaching those workshops, I started receiving emails and phone calls from all over the world saying, do you do anything about firefighter suicides? I said, man, I didn't know we had a problem. I contacted the United States Fire Administration, the National Fire Academy, the IFF, the NFF, the IAFC, the NFPA, the NVFC. You give me an acronym. I contacted them, and no one kept any data on firefighter suicides. So late in 2010, FBHA was founded, and we are still the only organization that tracks all fire, meaning volunteer and career, wildland, as well as military. I speak a lot on some Air Force military bases across the U.S., EMS, and dispatcher suicides. So to date, we have validated 1,542 of these tragic events, or excuse me, 1,552 of these tragic events, and I have personally spoken to almost 1,500 chiefs, EMS directors, to hear the methods, the reasons, pretty much why they were taking their lives and struggling with those issues. And we take all that data and all that information. We now have 7 different workshops, and we travel across the U.S. and Canada. I was actually supposed to speak in Germany in June, but the virus took care of that, because it is a global issue, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're not all about suicide. I mean, we're behavioral health, and the addictions, the depression, the PTSD, and the sleep, and all others. And then we also do a lot for family survivors. We hold an annual weekend retreat, as well as a closed Facebook group of family survivors that support each other and lean on each other. And they are some of the strongest, most bravest people you have ever met in your life. And so this is a little something that FBHA does.
That's some powerful stuff that FBHA does. What are some of the other statistics that we see that are leading to the suicides?
Well, when you talk to people, especially first responders or even people outside of the first responder world, they immediately go to, oh, it's the calls that you see. And it's got to be horrific. And it is. Absolutely. We've all been down that road. Yet in reality, when we look at the data, and I always go back to the data, the number unknown is the number one known reason given to us. They just don't know why. But the number one known reason is marital and family relationships. And then it's followed by depression. Number three is diagnosed PTSD. Number four is physical or medical issues. And we see this increased because of cancer in the fire service. We're seeing more and more of our brothers, and so far it's only been males that have left notes saying, you know what, I don't want to burden my family, either emotionally or financially. And they've been going out taking their lives. And then that's followed by addictions. So, these are the issues that we deal with. And then, of course, there's legal and financial, and then a combination. Maybe they did see a bad call, they turned to some addiction, and it ruins the relationship. And so, when we talk about a lot of things we talk in our workshops, but one of them is this thing called cultural brainwashing. And we know what that is in our world. Is we put this uniform on, we're supposed to act strong, brave, courageous, give help, don't ask for help. We handle all things on our own, and we don't want to be the weak link. And so that's the life we learned, either through if our family members were fire, or we came through the academies. We learn those things. But what's amazing is society is culturally brainwashed as well, because one of our workshops, we train counselors and chaplains as well as families, just spouses, partners, and children, parents. When you hear the term firefighter or EMS, what words come to your mind? And it's the same things: brave, self-sacrificing, courageous, heroic. Yet in 10 years doing all these workshops, I have yet to hear anyone say, well, they got anger issues. They got addiction problems and whole relationships. Let's not even go there with the divorce rates. And society is culturally brainwashed. We were on CBS Nightly News, a story about FBHA a few months ago, and it was across the country. And after a couple of days afterwards, for a couple of days, I was receiving emails and phone calls. Jeff, man, we knew about the military and police, but we didn't know about it, the fire service. And it's a very guarded secret because, as you know, we never talked about behavioral health. When that first class that I went to ever to teach was for the Philadelphia Fire Department. And I walked in that first class of 100 Philly firefighters in December of 2011 and said, we'll be talking about PTSD and suicide awareness. You thought I had leprosy. We don't talk about these things. And yet we've come a long ways in 10 years, but we still have a long ways to go, because when we look at the stats, and we estimate about a 65% reporting to FBHA, I think we lose out a lot on the EMS side. And one of the reasons I believe that is because a lot of the EMS organizations are private entities. And so they don't like to share that type of information. And then, of course, the other one is the volunteer fire. There's just so many volunteer fire departments. And even though we travel over 100,000 air miles every year, not a lot of people know about us. I just did a 2.5-hour webinar for Keene University. I have 4 of them scheduled. And, these were firefighters from New Jersey area. Not a single person in these classes so far has heard of FBHA. And I've been to New Jersey plenty of times. And so it's something that we don't really market us. It's not like, as your department had a suicide, call us. We're not Ghostbusters. We just can't come in there, because it's still a very personal family issue. And if families don't want the department to release that information, then they should not. And so when we look at it, since 2016, we've had 491 firefighters that we have validated that have taken their lives, in 219 EMS, for a total of 710 of our brothers and sisters since 2016. And 2016 was our high point at 150, where it was 111 fire and 39 EMS. But just last year in 2019, we lost 120 of our brothers and sisters. And this year, right now, we're at 60 firefighters and 21 EMS. But I don't want people to get confused and mixed up when they see our numbers, because they're everywhere.
Yeah.
People quote our numbers everywhere. And I constantly try to tell them, please do not look at these as numbers. These are the faces and names of our brothers and sisters and the families they left behind.
They're people.
Absolutely.
You know, when you were saying to date and you were given the numbers, it brings me back to each one of those numbers is a person who had a story, who was struggling, who had a family.
Absolutely. You
And
know,
it's heartbreaking.
and the thing that I've learned, and by the blessing of the good Lord, because I'm a firm believer, I don't go anywhere without my cross around my neck. But I'm a firm believer is that, and what I've learned is that I can't judge.
Yes.
I have not walked in their shoes. And yes, there have been some that have done things, illegal acts that I don't condone, but I cannot judge because I have no idea what their history was, their background, and the reasons for that. I might not like the act that they did, but I sure as heck cannot judge how they got to that point. And all we know is that we lost a brother or sister who was struggling. And when you opened up, Jared, your reading in the words, and I think you were going to allude to it, of my enemies and my persecution, how apropos is that for us, the enemies of being depression, PTSD, addictions, and the persecution that we wake up every day struggling against those demons that are dancing in our heads. So, like I said, how can we absolutely judge any others? We cannot, because we don't know what demons they deal with.
Exactly. A lot of people read those and go, enemies. Okay, so Hillary Clinton,
Right.
Some Donald Trump, people. No, enemies, PTSD, anxiety, depression, alcoholism, addiction, pornography. All those are enemies that, what's an enemy to me may not be an enemy to another individual. It's all relevant to that one person.
Right. And what drove them to those for comfort and solace? Well, was it the fire service culture where we couldn't say, hey, I'm struggling with that call, or I'm having issues with my spouse or partner, and I need some help? Because unfortunately, in what we see and do, in the thousands of fire and EMS that I speak to, is that many are afraid because when they come back from a 30, 45-day session or something where they've been gone, a lot of our brothers and sisters are a little leery as to will they be able to perform the job, and whether they do it on purpose or not, the members that coming back feel ostracized. They feel like they're not part of the team anymore. And that adds even more of a struggle for them that they're battling with. And so we have seen many fire and EMS come back from rehab saying, hey, I went and got help. And they come back and they, unfortunately, because of that, hey, you don't seem the same, or we're a little leery of, who you are now. They've gone out and taken their lives. And it's absolutely sad.
For those that have gone to rehab and came back and they're reintroduced, do you have any suggestions or tips for the firefighters that are co-workers to those people on I guess how to treat them? Like for me personally, I would treat them the same way as they did before they went to rehab.
Well, I think it's absolutely important that you have a liaison person who is in constant contact with that person in rehab. And when they come back, that to say, okay, now how would we like to approach this? Would you like to have a department meeting? Would you like to do a video of exactly what you're struggling with? Would you like to talk to them one-on-one and just see how that is and let them know? And it takes great strength to do that. Say, hey, I was struggling with addictions. I was going through marital issues and I had all these suicidal thoughts, or I turned to addictions. And I want you to know that if it can happen to me, just beware of yourself. And But I don't want them to take on a crusade by themselves either, because then that becomes overwhelming as well. And so you have to really make sure that you watch their behaviors. It's okay to speak up and say, hey, if I struggle, that's fine. But I see this a lot with family members who have lost someone, and they'll call us and say, hey, you know what, we want to do everything possible, we want to help, we want to do this and that. And I'll say, well, how long has it been since your loved one took his life? Oh, it's been about a month and a half. And I said, whoa, I said, you have to find that time to grieve,
Right.
and understand the pain that you might still go through. And so if you're constantly getting involved, and I've seen this happen with some families, is that a year later, they've put all this effort into trying to, bring this awareness, that they forgot about themselves, and now they're struggling. And so it should be a very minimal step, to always talk to the person. Would you like to say something? How would you like to approach the department? And you have to have buy-in from the top. You have to have a chief that will, he or she says, okay, this is what happened. I'm not going to give you all the details, but let's commend them. Just like if they went into a fire and tried to rescue 3 or 4 people, and they burned themselves very badly, and maybe now they have a disfigurement of an arm, people would say, oh man, that was fabulous. He's a hero. He's done this. It is no different than one of our brothers or sisters saying, hey, I'm hurting here, and I went and got help. We should be saying, oh, I commend you. Thank you. This job has taken so much from us, and get them involved in that aspect. And like I said, that's the culture. You get a burn for doing something. People, oh, wow, amazing, heroic. Yet when you struggle mentally, whoa, step back. Let's not say anything wrong. We can't joke anymore because we might say something, and that's not true. And it's because you're not saying those jokes and things that they feel like, oh, they're walking on eggshells with me. And
That's
so it
right.
becomes. So just have that open conversation with your department, but also have a liaison that will speak to that person during that time and say, how's it going? Would you like us to release any information? Would you like to do it when you get back? Whatever it is.
Yep.
Yep.
That also would be a good role probably for the department chaplain.
Absolutely would be. And that could be a liaison role very easily,
Yeah.
because they have that compassion, and they have that ability to relate to so many people within the different cultures of families, friends, neighbors, as well as the brothers and sisters they work with. So you're able as a chaplain to relate to people and bring that message. And it's very similar to, and your role as a chaplain could be for those military that are coming back. I get this question all the time, and unfortunately we forget about this. Are those veterans coming back from active duty? Since 2016, I think we've had 26 or 27 fire and EMS that have taken their lives due to PTSD coming back. And people ask, and chiefs call me and say, Jeff, what should we do? And this is just my recommendation. But it's nice to have that liaison, which could be a
Yep.
chaplain. But we also, if it's career, let's put them on days and assign someone. Maybe it is a chaplain, someone within the fire service, the department that's on a peer support team, that when there's calls, they ride along with him to see what his reactions are, to see if he's standing in a corner and kind of shaking or jumping, and maybe you can see in his eyes that he's recalling something. Meanwhile, while they're on days, they're either going to a VA plus a counselor that works with first responders. Let's make sure we take care of them. And the same thing for volunteers, is assign someone that when there's a dispatch and say, okay, Sue's on tonight, so we're going to assign Lisa to respond with Sue to calls to watch her reactions and see how she does. It might take a little bit of effort, but it's a lot better than what we've seen, where they come back from active duty, they get their 30 days off or something, they get a little training, and then they're right back on shift. And they're trying to do driver's training, because we had one firefighter I spoke to. He came back, he was doing driver's training, he was on shift. He's driving down the street, parked cars along the side, and a truck going the other way backfired. And he was a Humvee driver over in Afghanistan. And his reaction was he veered the engine into the parked cars. because of that sound just scared them so.
Yeah.
And so these, like I said, we have to start thinking of all these. And when I started this in 2010, all these different avenues didn't open up until you start talking to people and understanding what are the possibilities of going on. And that's why, even for volunteer career departments, it's so important to have a chaplain who is there to be that liaison. And unfortunately, there are times chaplains get a bad rap because people think, oh, they're trying to change me from Catholicism to Lutheranism and things. And I tell them that's not it. I work with chaplains all over the United States.
Yeah.
Most of them have some background in first responder world. They just want to give back a little bit more from the soul and from the heart. So this is why your role as a chaplain is absolutely important for those that are coming back from therapy sessions and 30 inpatient treatment as well as military.
Kind of bouncing off that, we kind of summed it up a little bit. Where do you think faith as a whole comes into the picture of dealing with the different issues, like the family and marital depression, PTSD, the medical issues? Where do you think faith comes into the picture?
Well, I think faith comes in is a major role, whether people admit it or not within themselves. Maybe they've fallen away a little bit. Maybe they don't even think about the good Lord or pray. Yet in times of need, they're looking for His help. But it's so important that we do a lot of consulting with fire departments on how to create a behavioral health program. And I estimate that probably less than 5% of all fire and EMS have a true behavioral health program. It's more than just having an employee assistance program and a peer support team. And we've consulted with San Diego Fire Department, Hillsborough County, one of their union, fire union, and several smaller departments on creating behavioral health programs. And we have 12 different points. Well, one of our points is need to have a chaplain program for those members who rely on the good Lord and faith to get them through this very difficult job and to help with their family relationships.
There was I think it was a YouTube video that you were in talking about the firefighter behavioral health and everything, and I loved how you said it in one of your presentations. You're humans doing we're humans doing a very superhuman job, and it's okay to be susceptible to our emotions. I think that's powerful stuff right there.
Well, it comes on the phrase that I coined called doing an internal size up. We pull up on a scene. Well, we got a 2-story heavy smoke coming from the A sector, this and that. We're setting up all the scene for those incoming departments. Now I thought, well, you know what? Maybe we need to do an internal size up. And what that means to me is that on a daily basis, we need to ask ourselves, why am I feeling this way? Why am I acting this way? And the best thing that we can do is listen to others. They see us a lot better than we will ever see ourselves. And if we can start practicing that, we start to understand who we are and our emotions of what's going on in this world. Why am I taking things home, because of the job? Why am I taking things to the job because of what's going on at home? Why am I sitting watching a comedy and I'm crying because of the emotions going through my body? And so it's very important that we all practice this internal size up. It gives us the ability to look within ourselves and to say, it's okay to try to understand why I'm feeling this way and to get the help then.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also like the part that you said it's a personal family issue where some families they're not ready, they might never be ready, or they might not be ready now to share those situations.
Right. And that's why when I validate the reports and speak to the chiefs, I've had 100% complicity because they know I'm very confidential. Being a licensed counselor, doing this for FBHA, I was an officer 23 out of 26 years in my career. It is important, but it is a family issue. And I get this question so many times. They say, well, Jeff, we never saw an obituary, or the department's not saying anything, they're trying to hide it. No, I look at it this way. I have 2 daughters. They're 38, they'll be 38 and 36. I will always be in the protective mode of my family. And we know, unfortunately, how suicide is looked at in society. they're weak. What was wrong with them? This and that. And I don't want anyone to think ill will of my daughters. And so we become in that protective mode. And so we might not put obituaries in there. We might not have a memorial service. If we do, it's private. It's only for the family. And so once again, it goes back to that. I can't judge.
Right.
I've never lost a loved one. And I always ask the good Lord this, I know we're not supposed to question the good Lord, but I never lost anyone to suicide in our family. I never had any friends that took their lives. Now, of course, I saw it on the job, and plus now I've met people that unfortunately have taken their lives, 17 of them. People that I knew that unfortunately fell prey to their demons. But once again, I can't judge. And as a family member, if that's their option, then that's their choice.
And Jeff, I like that we say that it's their choice, and other people taking the stance and the choice to expose these situations that are big and they're large and they're scary. And I'm privileged to be working with you throughout the rest of my bachelor's degree program on writing specifically on first responder suicide for my degree.
Well, and that's why these families that speak up, we had this closed Facebook group, and unfortunately, we had new family members because I let the new families know that these are families that have lost people, and they are opening up their hearts to you on how they can hopefully help. And it's amazing how they bond. They send Christmas cards to each other, and I don't know about a lot of these things because, like I said, I don't comment in that room. I've never lost anyone, but I see the comments and I see how they support each other, and they welcome with love. Say, I know you don't want to be in this group, but you're here. You're among family now, and that was always my wife Karen. Our intent was to let people know you're not alone out there. It's more than people realize that we're that we and for those families, you will be loved and you will be accepted. And it was never so poetically said by a young lady in our group who lost her brother. She said, I can come here and feel normal. I don't have to explain to people on the street where my brother is. I don't have to lie if I don't feel like talking about it. I come here, we feel normal because everyone here has lost someone and we don't have to walk on eggshells. And it was just, like I said, they are the most courageous, strongest people I've ever met in my life.
Thank you for doing that, and thank you for everything that you do for the Behavioral Health Alliance and for the first responder community. Thank
I
you for coming
appreciate it.
on here today also.
Okay,
Jerry?
I got two questions.
Okay.
What would you say are red flag major warning signs?
Yeah, and if you've ever been to one of our workshops, 99% of our workshops come from our brothers and sisters and the families and the information that we gain confidentially. But we never share names or departments unless families do. But when we looked, and I interviewed over 500 of our brothers and sisters that were struggling with suicidal thoughts, PTSD, and depression, the top five that we got were reckless and impulsive actions, anger, isolation, um, sleep deprivation, and loss of confidence and skills and abilities in their job. And we started seeing this a lot from they just didn't feel accepted, that they could perform their jobs. So they lost confidence in their jobs. Maybe they were struggling with identity issues and depression. And so they didn't feel that they could help others. So they lost that confidence. And one that we saw, especially in retirees, where they started losing their sense of humor. And we know what that is. That's a coping skill for us from all the things. And so retirees, most of us never go home and tell our loved ones about things that we see and do. We shared, we laughed, or whatever that coping skill was at the stations. And now we sit at home, we start thinking about these things, and so they lost their sense of humor. So those were our actually top six. But Now, there's just so many because we're
Right.
all individually different. Those were just the top 6 that we saw.
And if I'm struggling, how can I reach out? You know, obviously, or well, maybe not. I don't know because I've never been there. I would assume that people, first responders that commit suicide, they feel that is their last option,
Right.
their ultimately last option. If I'm to that point, how can I find help?
Well, and it brings up a great couple points. One is that what we try to educate in our workshops is a term called cognitive disconnect. And for me, in the counseling world and the fire service, my thought is that we're basing decisions on our emotions, whether it's depression, anger, because out of the 1,552, we've had 62 fire and EMS that killed their families and then themselves, murder, suicide. And so maybe in that heat of that rage, they have that cognitive disconnect and they base decisions on that anger. Or maybe it's a guilt, depression, addictions if they're under alcohol. And so we have to watch out for that aspect, understanding ourselves and get that help before it gets to that point. But what we always in the behavioral health uh, how to create a behavioral health program is have your resources. If you have an employee assistance program, train those counselors, have them come in, do ride time, have dinner, do training, volunteer and career, EMS dispatchers. But also go out in your communities and start to vet counselors that understand our culture. That if a firefighter or a paramedic comes to their supervisor and says, I'm struggling, well, here's our EAP. You remember Susan and Tom, they came out and they had dinner with us, but also here's our chaplains. You remember Chaplain Smith and Chaplain Williams came over and introduced themselves. And then here's our list of 3 counselors within our community that work with first responders. So these are some great things. And I'll walk the walk with you. I'll call. I'll sit outside while you go, into those appointments to walk the walk with you. And this is where it's become really important is the National Volunteer Fire Council, who's been working with us since 2011, 2012. They just have always felt our message was so vital. So we work very closely. We had this conversation late last year, and they knew I get 10 to 15 calls a week from fire and EMS all over the United States saying, hey, do you have someone in my area? So the MVSC said, well, Jeff, could FBHA put together a national behavioral health directory of counselors? And so it became live on July 9th, I believe it was, and we're constantly adding more and more counselors as they apply for this. They send an application to be on the directory. Well, yours truly vets them, and we are now up to about 260 or so that will be on this list. I think the MVSC updates it twice a month.
Yes.
So we're at about 260, and I still have another 20 to be put on the list, to vet and put on the list. And it's important because now they can go to either our website or the NVFC's, or we say, hey, organizations link up to it. So the chaplains, they can link up to it. Departments can link up to it and say, here's who we have in your area. But if they don't have anyone in their area, but that's the good thing is, though, telehealth, if they're in their state, you can use that from the comfort of your home and have a counseling session.
Yeah.
But if they don't, they can call their chaplain, or the chaplain can call us, the department can call us, or the individual, and I will vet counselors for them. I do that free. And so you can find all my contact information at www.ff, like firefighter, B as in Bravo, ha.org. So ffbha.org. You'll see the directory under the resources tab. And if there's none in your area, feel free to give me a call. But remember, like I said, if you're in that state, you can call any one of those in state as long as, if your insurance as well. And so those resources, we didn't see those 10 years ago. And
Right.
it's amazing to see now.
And we'll definitely put that information up on our podcast Facebook page,
Mhm.
and hopefully it will help somebody.
It has. Just by you doing these podcasts and things, it opens eyes of individuals, and I've seen it where they've called and said, "Jeff, I saw you on a webinar. I saw you on a podcast. I've seen you speak in a conference." It does. So every little bit that you gentlemen do with your organization and other organizations, whether you realize it or not, it does help someone and it does save a life. So kudos to you.
Well,
I
thank
think
you. Dan, is there anything else you want to ask?
nothing in particular to ask, but one thing that really stuck out to me, and I appreciate that you said this, Jeff, being willing to walk the walk with them,
Yeah.
being willing to listen to their vulnerability, and sometimes not even say anything, just to listen to them, be willing to go with them and sit in the parking lot while they go to their counseling session. That's that's great stuff, and that's stuff that chaplains do all the time.
Absolutely. And the number one thing I say in our workshops, I said, if you take anything away from this workshop, is this, and that is learn how to listen. We do a great job of hearing. We do a great job of asking questions because we respond. But when that brother or sister comes to you, if you can learn how to listen to key words that they might be struggling, not putting words in their mouth, telling them, take your time. Uh, and that is so vital. And so just learning how to listen to our brothers and sisters. And at times, that's all sometimes people want is just someone to listen to them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, let me read those Bible verses again.
Please do.
And Dan and I actually, two things, Dan. I'm going to throw curveballs at you. Ready?
Hit me.
One, I think we should do another episode here shortly and kind of dig deeper into these verses.
Absolutely.
And then two, uh, I'll talk to my wife, and I think it would be good to bring her on to get kind of a spouse's
Absolutely.
perspective of
Absolutely.
being a firefighter's wife and raising a family that has a firefighter in it, because I'm sure that she would be willing to share some of her thoughts and stories with us.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, Jared. One of my favorite workshops is Saving Those Who Save Others, the family edition. And to hear them open up about issues, because we want them to understand why we act the way that we do, but also how it affects you and your family at home.
Yeah.
And that is one of the key points of our behavioral health program is educating your families, getting them involved.
It's funny you mentioned that, because yesterday I came off of a shift working on the ambulance, and I come home and my kids, they're 4 and 2.5, and they are just daddy, 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 and I just want to decompress, just. And I say, chill out. And my wife said to me yesterday, "You've been here 10 minutes, only 10 minutes." And so it's like, I'm trying. So let
So 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 here's my recommendation for you and your wife. We've all heard of structured timeouts. We did it for our kids. I would like to see your family practice a structured timeout where when you get home, you get 15 minutes to a half an hour at the most, where you can walk the dog, take a shower, eat breakfast to decompress, to get acclimated back into the family life. And it's working. I've
and
had families call me who said,
that
"This works, Jeff."
that's exactly what I did. Is I went inside, I took a shower, had a cup of coffee, and then we were right back at it, and that's what.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I'll read those verses again. Thank you, Jeff, very much for coming
Thank
on.
you.
So Dan, I'll read those verses and you can close this out, okay?
Absolutely.
All right. So again, the Bible passage is from Psalm 31, verses 14 through 16. But I trust in thee, O Lord. I said, Thou art my God. My times are in thy hands. Deliver me from the hand of mine enemies and from them that persecute me. Make thy face to shine upon thy servant. Save me for thy mercy's sake.
Amen.
Well, let's go to the Lord in prayer. Loving God, thank you for letting us have this conversation with Jeff. He's doing amazing work with his organization of the Firefighter Behavioral Health Alliance and bringing into light the darker side of the public safety community, which are very noble and honorable professions, and to realize that it's okay to struggle and to reach out for help. And these numbers that are large and scary, they're not just numbers. They are people, they are family members, they are firefighters, first responders, and each of them have a story, and we can all learn from them. Please please watch over all the families that are struggling right now and that have lost a loved one due to suicide. Shine your light in these times. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen.